Hi, my name's Patrick. I'm an alcoholic and drug addict. I've been through the Big Book Step Study process with the help of my sponsor, who's also been through the process, coming to meetings like this, God. Made some amends and try to practice the steps in my daily living, the principles in my daily living. So I made it to AA through a halfway house in Gardner, Massachusetts. I made it there because I started drinking and using drugs in Holyoke, Massachusetts, like the age of 16. And then my last drink, God willing, and my last drug use ended up in Holden, Massachusetts, which is far away from Holyoke. Yeah. But that's where it takes me. It got me, it burnt all my bridges in my city and with my family. Bless you, and may the devil never get you. I burned my bridges in Holyoke. I ended up around this area. My sister and my brother-in-law took me in, and also was getting 12-stepped by a couple friends. And so I was dry for a little bit around this area, in the Auburn area, for like 3 months. And, I ended up relapsing. And I ended up in CHL detox, and what my thing usually was leave after 2 days, which I did. And I had big plans. I thought I had money, and I met a kid who knew the area out here. And when I discharged myself, and we went around the corner to the bodega, I thought I had $1,000 in the bank. I had negative $143 in the bank. But that didn't, we still got what we needed to get. And they were, like I said, the kid was from around here. They dropped me off in a park in Holden and said, "We'll be back, Pat." And I was like, all right. I was like, whatever. I had what I needed. So I was like, all right, go do your thing. I'll be here waiting for you. They never came back. And eventually I ended up on a locked ward at UMass in Worcester. Like I said, I was from Holyoke, and I ended up back in this city, and I'm like, I tried to get back into CHL. They're like, you just discharged yourself like less than 24 hours ago. You can't get back here for 2 weeks. So then I walked to AdCare, and they didn't take my insurance. And then I went to UMass Memorial, and I talked to some people there, and I ended up on a locked ward. That's where drugs and alcohol started taking me years before. The doctors, it took my health. Eventually, it was to probation, the local precinct, assault and battery charges. What's those? I always forget. I couldn't. What's it called when you can't trespass? Restraining order, exactly. A couple of those. And that's where drugs and alcohol took me. So my sobriety date is June 18th of 2016. And that was around the time where I was in that locked ward. My motives weren't to join AA, but I ended up in Gardner in a halfway house, ended up in AA, and that's where I joined AA, was before the 6-month halfway house stay. Things in my life and my perspective started to change. And I made the Big Book Step Study through a girl. She was in AA, and she was coming to meetings. First, she was like, "Hey, you ever hear this type of meeting?" Because I was going to all these different types of meetings. Now that I'm in the sober house, I got more freedom. And I was like, no. And she's like, "Check it out. You could go to this website and listen to speakers and stuff. It's out of Worcester." And she's like, "Yeah, this is the step that I spoke on." I'm like, "Yeah, maybe I'll listen." Never did. And then I went to Leominster on a Tuesday night, and that's where I started, and when I started to come to Big Book Step Study. And eventually I got a sponsor and started going through the steps. And, things in my life started to change before coming here into this style and this type. But then once I started kind of, taking suggestions in here, and then started going through the process in here, things really started to change. It's really, I could dig a little bit more deeper. Because I never done it through the Big Book before. Just like AWOLs, which was all good, And so steps 8 and 9. let's see here. I started the list with the help with my sponsor and God and prayer and meditation and stuff like that. And then I started to go out and do some amends on my list. Now, when I started to learn, I remember hearing in this meeting specifically, one time we were talking about this step, and the person talked about, so my eight step list ended up being most of my 4-step resentments. And I was like, oh my God. I already started my writing. I had a huge inventory list. So I just started to get freaked out right then. I didn't, you know what I mean? Like learning that here, I was like, oh man, I'm screwed. I'm going to have a huge, list. So that was pretty cool to learn. My list didn't end up being as big as my inventory list. Some other things I started to learn while coming to these meetings and started, going through the process and doing my writing and inventory and turnarounds and all that type of stuff is the action into action and stuff like that. Like this thing's lined up, which I never knew and started to learn, like I said, is like 6 and 7. It's like 4 and 5 I start learning about these defects and these shortcomings, big ones and then subtle ones. That's what I liked about this style was with the help of my sponsor and God, my sponsor gave me this thing called the hit list, he called it. And it was all these ways, like subtle ways that I didn't see of how I could be selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and afraid. Like I was just thinking general, like, okay, I'm not stealing anymore, I'm not lying anymore and stuff like that. But then he gave me this hit list where it went real, specific, which really got to the nature of my wrongs in the heart and these things I'd never thought about. So finding that stuff out of my list, and then 6 and 7, it's like, am I ready and am I willing to start letting this stuff go and start to change? I remember hearing about change when I started to come to AA. That's like a big thing, You got to change. Nothing changes if nothing changes. In action when I came to AA, And then coming in here, really discovering that stuff and really learning yeah, I got to change. How am I going to change? Okay, I see them all right here. Am I willing? Okay, yep. Do I got a relationship with God? Because I'm going to need this energy and this help, that's not human, that I've learned is within me. I just got to chill, relax, come to meetings like this and see how you guys, have that experience and that help, and be aware and reflect on my 24 hours a day and build that relationship and see how that works to let these things go that I discovered in my 4-step and talked with my sponsor about in my 5th step. And then I never really realized that and it talks about it in the chapter, is where I could start letting these things go and start the change, which a gentleman actually just spoke at the Tuesday meeting in Leominster, and he's from this area, and he's a regular attendee, and it was really good. And he was talking about the change, and this is, I never really realized it until I started to go through the process and come to meetings like this. This is where it could start. Because I learned early on, it's I said sorry a million times, and then just kept on doing the same thing over and over and over again, And then here, it's okay, learning that, all you do is say sorry. What are you going to do to change that? What are you going to do to change that? And then coming and doing this process, it's I don't know. How am I going to change it? Go look, all that stuff I just wrote out in the turnarounds. That's the stuff I got to change, man. And I'm okay, all right. So that's where things started to change early on when I put the drink and the drug down, and coming to AA and trying, changing some general stuff. But like I said, it gets really deep and precise when I was doing this process. So yeah, more things started to change, and that's where I started to get a little bit more peace and serenity, and have a better understanding of what that stuff is. Let's see here. It says, now we need more action, which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at step 8 and 9. talks about self-appraisal, and now we go out to our fellows to repair the damage. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. And that's what I'm talking about, that change, that debris, that stuff that blocks me from my higher power, which I wrote about in the turnarounds and stuff like that. I wrote the list now, and now I have to go out and go to this person and take responsibility and accountability for this stuff that I did, and actually learned about the stuff what I did through that inventory, because I just thought it was all them, the first part of the writing, and it's like, oh crap. So go into these persons, and that's why I need God. And it also talks about this too. I need help. I need to humble myself, and it says, before taking drastic action which might implicate other people or any of my amend action, we secure their consent. If we have obtained permission, we have consulted with others. Talked about my boys and my women here in AA, my sponsors. Ask God, so bring it into prayer and meditation. And the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. So, because I'm freaked out, one of the ones that was always on my mind was like money, this financial restitution that I had to pay back, because I stole a bunch of money from my employers when I worked at a liquor store at one time. And that one was always on my mind. And so when I finally got to this step and talked about it with my sponsor, definitely ended up on the list. Finally reaching out, it's like, oh my God, I was so afraid, but actually made that leap of faith, and reached out and reached out a few times, and because there was like 4 owners, it was 2 husband and wife owners, and 2 of them got back to me and 2 of them never did, and I never got to meet up with them yet, because just things didn't work out. There was a lot of stuff going on in their lives, come to find out, that he told me about, and but just reaching out and being willing and ready to do that was like such like a relationship and a builder with my higher power, stuff like that. Some of the experiences I have made with making amends is so with family I've made some amends, and just that whole taking responsibility thing and accountability thing, and not saying I'm sorry, and then asking them, is there anything I could do to make this right, at the end. So some things that I've done, or it was suggested for me to do, making my amends, I paid some money to like different types of charities. I've given blood, and what are some other things that were suggested to me? I can't really think about right now, but a couple experiences I've had making amends thus far is, so my best friend, he passed away back in 2015, and that one was always on my mind too. I had a lot of guilt and shame because we were beefing at the time, and he ended up taking his own life, and so I was always wondering, how am I going to make amends to him? And so putting him on the list, talking about it with my sponsor, we had an idea, and so I was like planning on doing this, and less than a week later, I was visiting back home, and I see his mom walking the dog in the neighborhood, so I went out and talked to her, and she was like, Pat, she was like, I have something for you if you're all right, to take it or whatever. And I was like, yeah, what is it? She's like, oh, I got Justin's ashes. And she's like, I got one of his winter hats that he loved and some pictures. And I was like, get the hell out of here. I was like, oh, she's like, I didn't think you could handle this stuff when he passed away. I didn't want to give it to you, because you weren't in the right frame of mind. I was so selfish back then, you know what I mean? It was, it's self-pity and so selfish. She was right, And I would ended up doing something stupid. And so that was less than a week later. And I was like, this is crazy. I remember talking to my sponsor about it. He's like, holy shit, Pat, that's crazy. He was like, do you see? I was like, yes, I see. I started to see this stuff early on. And then coming here, man, doing my third step prayer here. This is, I know, on a different step, but this is where it's, stuff I started to see. And music is a big part of my life and my family's life. And I lost that for a long time and started gaining back in sobriety. And then me and my sponsor were supposed to do the third step prayer at St. Leo's in Leominster. That was locked. So we went to St. Cecilia's, and I was like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, man, I'm open to whatever. And we ended up doing it there. And then I'm like, who is St. Cecilia? And he's like, I don't know, look it up. Looked it up. It's the patron saint of music. So that was another one. I was like, get the hell out of here, man. This is crazy. So stuff like that really built faith and a relationship with the higher power. And that was just the beginning. And of this stuff. And another experience that I've had is with my father. That was a tough one because I didn't know. I was so messed up during the last couple years. After my mom died, I had questions to ask him during I'm like, is this okay to ask him? Because it was did I steal mom's? I wasn't sure if I stole my mom's wedding ring and stuff, after she died. And I'm like, because that's got to be part of the amends, right? And my sponsor said, yep, this is what you're going to do, blah, blah, blah. And I had to ask some questions like that. And he was like, yeah, he told me, yes, you did. You took it. It went missing a week after she died, and stuff like that, is so hard. And that's why I've learned, and I, thank God I wasn't prejudiced with this higher power thing. And I was willing to build this relationship and give myself some grace and take the grace from my higher power. And it's okay to have doubt and come back to it and, build it even more. Because hearing stuff like that is that would bring me right out. Before I made it to AA and Big Book Step Study sponsor, anything in my life, in my daily living, I would have to drink or use drugs over. Whether it was good or bad, I got a job, lost a job, a baby was born, a death happened. I would always have to have something in me to get through that. And, going through something like that, my dad's like, yeah, it was missing. And so, talking to him about that and taking the responsibility for that with my dad. And then at the end, I was like, is there anything I missed? That you can think of. Like, oh, here we go. And because he knows, man, the family knows. And so he only mentioned one thing, which I was very surprised about. He goes, yeah. He goes, did you take my suit? One of my suits? I was like, huh? I was like, a suit? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, probably. But I just wasn't expecting one of his suits, you know what I mean? That was unexpected. I'm like, I don't know, but probably yes, because I was taking anything, and I was just a mental case, and on alcohol and drugs. And with that was, just all the experiences so far with amends and stuff like that, and in the 9-step amends, or the 9-step prayer and the 9-step promises and stuff like that, or these little prayers, the tools throughout the book and throughout the steps. And there's a little tool, there's a little prayer in there to ask in the morning for help with family and stuff like that. And of course, the promises that I've been hearing since coming into AA, and then started to learn about a little bit, and then coming here and this is what that's about. Okay, it's all a learning experience and a trip thus far. I still have, quite a few amends to make. Oh, and the last amends I made was just a couple of months ago. I was at Planet Fitness at the city where I grew up in. I was visiting, went to Planet Fitness, and I'm at one of the machines, and I look over, and I'm like, oh. And I was like, I know that lady. It was my ex's mother. This my last girlfriend, the one who I had a restraining order, all this chaos, domestic A and B charges, and just the nicest family. And I just kept bringing my toxicity and my chaos back, And I saw her, and we looked at each other, and I was like, hey, and she's like, oh, Patrick, and we started talking and stuff like that. So I was like, and she was definitely on the list. And it came into my mind. I'm like, should I? And like, yep. And I just felt, I felt moved to, and I felt like it was the right time. And so I took responsibility, and I took accountability, and I brought this stuff up and told her I know I was just such a bringer of chaos rather than harmony and peace, And she, we talked about it, and she's like, I forgive you, Pat. I do forgive you. Her father was a staple in AA in Holyoke. Old timer, old school AA. So, I remember hearing that when I was dating her daughter. And, I had a relationship with her and her mother, her daughter's grandmother. The whole crew lived in that house. And, I remember hearing about that. She was like, Pat, the woman I made amends to, she used to tell me, Pat, you just got to leave. You got to go. You got to leave. You got to leave here. She used to tell me, the people at the bar are always going to be there, but you just got to get away. She would tell me this, And so finally, that's just the way it happened. I did end up leaving, but I had nowhere else to go. And luckily, I was blessed to make it out to Gardner, to AA. I met that girl. She introduced me to Big Book Step Study, and I've been here and still going to AA ever since. And I've had ups and downs and all arounds. Like I said before, I couldn't go through my day without, the thought of, oh crap, what am I going to get to get me through this day? And now things have happened in sobriety, and I believe it's only because building a relationship with God and going through these steps and letting go, and trying these stuff like making amends and letting go and taking it back and just letting go and on a daily 24-hour basis, and taking it back and letting go. And that's how it is. That's for me is my daily experience. And through that, I could be way more or less thinking about myself, even though I find myself thinking about myself a lot, But the help I'm able to, or of service I'm able to be of humans, animals, and creatures of this planet, I find it way more than before. And that's because I don't have drinks and drugs in me. I got a plan and like this thing laid out for me. I got friends, who are sober and trying to do the same thing. And I got God in my life and a faith and a belief system. So it's like I've gone through some stuff just like in sobriety, and even more, just like before sobriety, and even more in sobriety. Life and death, jobs, changing jobs. I've had like 4 or 5 different jobs since getting sober. I used to think it was just black and white thing. I needed a house. I needed kids. You just do one job and that's it in life. And, that's it. And no, it's not it. Going health issues, in the thought of like, Pat, what are you going to do to get through this? That's come through my head. But it's crazy because now it's like, I swear, it's like pray. Call your friends. Call your sponsor. You know what I mean? Like read a daily, like some positive, some spiritual book. You know what I mean? Like go on YouTube and check out this spiritual teaching and try that out. Some breathing, some, whatever it may be. It's only because of AA, 12 steps, and God that I have an open mind to like be open to that stuff and to then be okay with myself and my human self and get through the day and get through the 24 hours and maybe be a little help to somebody or something in my daily living. And thank you, Joe, for asking me to speak. Thank you guys for having this meeting. Peace, Patrick, alcoholic and drug addict.